Welcome to Interior Analysis. I'm Evan Westman,
I'm Jelani T. Kelly.
I'm David Jones.
and what a lovely day it is because today we're talking about Mad Max Fury Road. Uh, so I want to start with your guys' reactions because I've seen this a few times, but I was a little surprised that neither of you had seen this, and I specifically wanted to not know either of your reactions because I feel like this could go like either way for both of you. I feel like there's stuff like that both of you might like here, but also stuff that might kind of like distance both of you. So whoever wants to go first.
Just based off the text messages, I want to hear what Jelani has to say.
I didn't like it.
I do too, honestly.
I didn't like it. I didn't like this movie, man.
Okay.
And I don't plan to watch this again. Why? You may be asking why.
Yes,
Yeah.
I am asking why.
I didn't have fun. I wouldn't call it boring, but the only time where I was locked in on like what was going on was when Max had the sawed off pointed at Furiosa and the women. I was like, oh wait, I don't know what's gonna happen here. This is kind of cool. And then it stopped. I think Ang Herod got her like leg grazed, and that was it. And I was like, okay, maybe there's gonna be more of that. I mean, there's more action in the movie, but I didn't care. I did not care. And I'll explain why. And the topics kind of mix. Well, me and my topic, I get to a point where it kind of mixes with David's topic. But yeah, aside from that, I didn't care for any of the action.
Really?
I know it's practical. Most of it is practical. Going into this knowing that, it didn't change my experience. I'm like, oh yeah, they probably did. I wonder how many times it took them to do this take. Cool.
I'm pretty surprised to hear you say that because like I figured the action was gonna be what, like, if you liked it, it was gonna be. This is the best action movie ever, I think. Like,
Nah.
there's a couple contenders, but I think this takes it. Okay, I'm a little disappointed, but I'd like to hear more of why as we go.
I mean, I was disappointed too because I'd heard nothing but good things from this movie, and then maybe it's just something with me and hype that surround movies because that happened with Everything Everywhere. I finally saw it.
It could be
just
that.
Like, that's it. All right.
I mean, you said. Let me ask this because you said you're never gonna watch this again. Like I've had that with hype for some things as well, where I'm like, oh, this is way overrated first time, and then I like give it a couple years, and I'm like, oh, this is actually like better than I gave it credit for, and I didn't like see what was good about it the first time. Are you like that against it that you like it was like an actively bad time and you're never gonna try it again?
Actively bad, no. But as far as like sitting and watching this by myself again, no. If I were to watch with a friend, maybe that's fine. If I were to catch this on TV and it's on in the background, but like I'm not gonna seek this out again. I didn't care for the action, story, world, any of that, anything. Which is
okay. Well, I'm a little surprised and a little disappointed, but we'll hear you out.
Yeah.
You're not the only person I've heard say they don't like this, and I do like. I'm just surprised that the action isn't like it is kind of a weak point for you because I thought that was going to be the selling point for you.
So did I.
Okay, David, then I guess we'll go to you.
So, I remember in 2015 when this came out, there was a lot of buzz around it, and then it did super well at the Oscars, and it's rare that, like, a movie that's super popular also does super well at the Oscars. There's usually, like, that disconnect with blockbusters. So I purposely avoided it because it's like rare that those things ever happen anymore. So I wanted to I kind of do this with all good movies and shows and books. I try to not read them because I want them to always exist for me to read. And then like I'll pick like one a year and I'll slowly go through it opposed to like going through a lot. So I'm glad you picked this one. And now having seen it, I will say I wasn't in love with it. Like it wasn't something I would rewatch for joy, but like I was so impressed by it and the filmmaking and the stunt work and everything that went into actually what I was seeing that it felt so grand and so big and so well done. Like I was like, it was the closest thing to like watching Circus Olay live, like on a movie. It was so well done, the stunt work, and it looks gorgeous. Like it is a stunning movie. It's some of my favorite oranges and blues, and
It's a lot of orange.
a lot of orange. And I also couldn't not think of Dune while watching it. Like the desert scene, the clans, the whole currency of water. I was like, this is a weird steampunk kind of Dune that's fun. And I was having a really fun time with it in that way too. But by the end of it, I ended up really enjoying it more than I was like thought I was going to, and more than I enjoyed it in the beginning. Like the first 30 minutes being that action sequence was really cool, but I wasn't like amazingly captivated to the point where I was like, I'm going to need to rewatch this all the time. But by the end of the movie, I was surprised how much of like the story and the plot of this guy and his wives and what he's been doing kind of snuck up on me, and Furiosa and everything, and I was actually like invested. So I had a good time.
Nice. Okay, so 1 for 2. And that's good that we'll have like positive and negative from like in terms of debate. I still wish you had liked this, Jelani, because I really thought it might be a favorite for you actually. But I'm not like shocked. I'm just surprised that the action is not the selling point for you, because my prediction was like some of the other weirdness was going to be an issue. And yeah, I mean, I'm glad you liked it too, David. Even if it's not like I wasn't expecting this to maybe be as high on either of your lists as it is for me, but like, yeah, okay. So is that all your guys' initial reactions? I can go through mine if you guys are done. Yeah. So I moved this up from a 4.5 stars to 5 stars. It's like on the bottom half of my 5s, I guess, but I was like, you know what? Every shot in this movie is awesome. I feel like that's enough to give it a 5. I also someday, I don't know if you guys have heard of this since you just watched it. There's a version of this called the Black and Chrome edition, which is like, I think it's all black and white. It might be like just like a toned down color palette, but I think it's all black and white. I really want to watch that someday because I've heard it's like cool and I haven't seen it yet. When I have the money to, I want to buy that, but that's like, that exists. Small note, but I like that Furiosa is a heroic character with a prosthetic limb. I feel like most prosthetic limb characters are villains, like Claw in Black Panther, the Winter Soldier. I know he's not always a villain, but he starts off as one. Darth Vader, and then Azog in The Hobbit, just 4 examples. Good to see a protagonist with a prosthetic limb. And then, this isn't like a topic that's worth getting into, but I was thinking about like just this time, and I feel like there were 4 action movies that came out around this time that were kind of trying to push the envelope and like make a new style. So there's this, and then John Wick is another, and I feel like these 2 are the ones that like kind of like ended up having the most influence. Then Kingsman is also there, and you know, obviously is good, but I don't feel like it really took off like that style. And then I don't know if you guys remember this, Hardcore Henry was another movie from that time.
The first person one.
For the first person.
Yeah, I just rewatched the trailer for it before. I have, that's the only one of those I haven't seen, but I remembered seeing the trailers. So I don't know, I was just remembering that like it was kind of an interesting moment with action where like we'd had several years of like big post Avatar CGI kind of dominating things, and then those four movies were like, not that there's like a aversion to CGI in them, but they were kind of like trying to revamp action at the time, and I feel like John Wick is the style that we see imitated the most now. But I think this movie has had its own, like, a different kind of influence, where like now you see movies being advertised as like, oh, no CGI, which isn't really true, but it's kind of marketed that way. And I feel like this was, at the time this came out, I don't remember there being anything that really tried to do that. Like, there maybe wasn't as much like novelty with visual effects anymore, but nobody was being like, oh, look at how practical this stuff is, until this movie came along, because everyone talks about the practical effects with this. So that was just kind of a thing that I was remembering. For my money, this is the best action out of those. But it also makes sense why we haven't really had anything really follow in its footsteps, because just another note before we get into the topics. I don't know if you guys have heard of this, but this movie didn't have like a traditional script. It had like a bajillion storyboards that were just made without having like a traditional screenplay to
That
go
makes
with it.
perfect
Because
sense.
yeah, it really shows. And like there's just so, like, talk about visual storytelling. Like, this is some of the most like visual storytelling that I feel like I've ever seen. And maybe we'll get into that a bit. So my topic is theme in world building and action. Because I feel like I was saying a second ago about visual storytelling, I feel like this movie explores its theme like almost entirely in the world building and the action, and basically nowhere in the dialogue. Like, all of David, you were kind of mentioning this in your initial reactions of like the story kind of like came together for you at the end. I don't know if that's pointing to like my topic exactly, but I do think it's like, it's not making itself obvious. Like, there's a term that I feel like you hear in a lot of like 3-act structure models, where there's like a theme stated beat in like the first 10 or 15 minutes, where somebody kind of like signals to you what the movie's about. And I don't want to say that that beat doesn't exist here, but I don't feel like it's loud. Like, you have the whole like sort of inciting incident when Immortan Joe realizes that the wives have escaped, because we see him like find that out before we actually see them having escaped. So I think if it's any moment, it's there, but I feel like the theme of this is really just like embedded in the whole thing by like virtue of the fact that like this is a like fantastical patriarchal system that the protagonists are fighting against and ultimately taking down. Like, all of the theme work is done in what we learn about this society and then the ultimate defeat of it. Which I think is really cool that it's able to like just work so well as a metaphor. Like, you guys know how my taste can be sometimes with like Sorkin type movies, where I am totally fine watching something that's 2 hours of like just people talking. But this is like more impressive to me. Weird comparison, but I followed this movie up the night after with Women Talking from 2022. I don't know if you guys have heard of it. But it's actually like, it almost feels like a prequel to this, where it's like, spoilers for that movie, but ultimately like the women in that movie decide to leave. It's like an Amish, I think it's Amish, community that is like systematically oppressing them. but it's all dialogue and no action. So it's almost you like I say prequel because you could almost see it as like this movie they've already decided to leave, and then women talking the entire thing is like weighing that decision. So I just bring that up to say that like it's a valid approach to like both are valid approaches to theme, but I feel like this one is harder to pull off in a lot of ways. So to turn it over to you guys, and this is a type of question that I do a lot on these episodes that may not have a solid answer. But when do we think it's better to put theme in dialogue, and when is it better to put it in like the story world or in the action?
For me, at least visually, like you're always trying to tell this in this form, the story visually. So if you can kind of convey it over imagery, over action, then you're really doing what you're supposed to be doing. And if you're able to have a great line that can embody all of these images that you've just spent an hour, 2 hours showing people, and it's like a couple words or whatever, and it can really hit it home, then go for it. But like at the end of the day, it's the imagery and the action before the words in film.
It is a visual medium. Yeah, I don't have much to add to that. I agree.
I basically agree with it as well. I'd say like it's a balancing act in most cases, I think. But in looking at this, I feel like it's a signal of like putting it into the world building and action should always be, or maybe not always world building, but at least like the plot and action that the characters are taking. I feel like that's pretty much always better. So like that should be the starting point. If you can get something across without dialogue, that's probably better. And then even if you are doing it with dialogue, then I think it's good to like have there be at least some kind of subtext there. So like even if characters are talking about one thing explicitly, there might also be like another theme that's sort of being explored in subtext. I was thinking about Barbie as an example of that, where like there's a lot of very like surface level discussion of theme that I think for some people kind of like made them think it was a little too on the nose. But I think if you look beyond that, there's a lot of other like themes that are being explored in subtext there. An example, just pointing to a couple other examples, like I know it's a cliche for me to do this at this point, but I think Inception does really well with its metaphor. Like there is theme in the dialogue there, but the like I don't want to say symbolism, but like the sci-fi world that's built there is just like infused with so much meaning, and that's why I love revisiting it. Like there's so much packed in there. X-Men I think is another good example. That one's a little more than a little. That one's very easy to spot. But it functions well, I think, and it like mirrors society pretty well. An example we've talked about that I think does good sometimes and not others is The Boys. And I've kind of harped on this a little when we've talked about it, but like I always feel like that show does better with social commentary when it's commenting on like broader societal things rather than when it's like, hey, look at this thing that we like copied straight from real life. Wasn't that dumb? Here's us doing it like so loudly that you can't ignore how much it's like the real life thing. That may not be the fairest comparison, but I feel like that show like has a good metaphor that, or not metaphor necessarily, but like when it's doing social commentary in its story world, I like it better than like when it's being more creative and subtle. Did you guys have anything to add there? I have one more point, but I want to keep the floor open.
I have notes on the world building itself, not so much the theme.
Okay. We can go into that.
Personally, I think it fails at world building.
How
No.
so?
Well, let me get into that. No, I have not seen the other Mad Max movies. The last one before this one was made in 2015 or released in 2015 was made in 1985. So I like to think this one was made to, I don't know if whether it's a reboot or some weird continuation that I don't know if the continuity gets messy or whatever. I don't know how it connects to the unless if it's a reboot, fine, but I don't know if it connects to the 80s movies. So that being said, I like to think this was made to bring in new audiences for this franchise, series, whatever you want to call it. I'm a part of that new audience, but I felt like there was so much lacking in the world itself. They gave us bits and pieces of how things became what they are. I get it's a movie about Max, and I don't know how they'd pull it off, considering everybody in this world has lived in it. I really think this movie would have benefited from a fish out of water character. Doesn't have to be Max, obviously, but this world has clearly lived in, been in for years. As an audience member looking from the outside in, I have no idea what the hell anyone is talking about or saying. There's so little dialogue in this movie. I think it's important to pay attention when they do speak, but when they do speak, I don't know what they're talking about. They have, for example, they have what seems like new terms or slang that are never explained. That could be explained if you had somebody be a fish out of water character. The weird crow people, they're pointed at. We passed them on the road. Never seen or heard from again. They were referenced. They were like, oh, that green place with the weird crow people that we passed. That's where the green went. Okay. So why I kind of wanted to see the crow people, honestly. Like, you showed them, you teased them or whatever. Why are they out there on stilts? What are they looking for?
Cool.
Why are they roaming the the wasteland? I guess you'll save it for a sequel. I don't know. The bullet farm and gas people. All the gangs kind of blended, so I don't know if we ever actually met with the main characters, come into conflict with them at any point, other than like the initial journey out. Like, are they only fighting the war dogs at the end?
I think they're the motorcycle chase where they're like going off the jumps and throwing the grenades at it. That's the
That's a
I forget
different
which
gang.
group that
That's
is.
not even the
that's
bullet
gang
farm.
I
that
think
runs
it-
their gas.
Yeah, I think it is, and I want to say they join up with the bad guys after that point.
The
But
war
I
dogs.
might be wrong about that.
Okay. The fact that we don't know is a problem. I don't even
really
remember.
care.
I don't know
but
their
I-
names,
I
but I feel
guess
like
I
I can
don't.
discern the groups.
I know for sure the one is the bullet farm, and then the Morton Joe's gang is the war dogs or whatever they're called, and then
The
the
War
gas
Boys, yeah.
ward people did them. And then you got the gas peoples. I feel like gas guzzler. I don't know. Name doesn't matter. The green seed and the green and the seed plot, the whole thing with the lady holding on to the seeds, like, oh, I want to plant some more trees. Guess we'll save that for a different movie. I feel like that was made to like give a connection to one of the, I don't even remember their names. I don't even remember the old lady's name.
I don't think most of them say their names. They all have names if you look in the credits, but I don't think they're ever said out loud.
Well, they're probably just as dumb as Furiosa and a Morton Joe, but that's also another point I'll get to. These are some questions I think could have been answered. if they were probably in a passing line of dialogue, because we were here for the action, I guess. How did Immortan Joe come into power? Why are all of those people following him? Isn't there water elsewhere? What are those white-skinned dudes, the ward boys? What are they? Like, how are they? Are they just painted? What's with the silver thing? Where did their religion come from? I know it seems based off of like Norse religion with Valhalla. That's the only connection I could make. But where did that come from? If any, like, I don't think if any of those questions are answered in a passing line of dialogue, that is not how you world build. That is not the best way to go about it. Also, what are the names? What the hell are the names? They have. I feel like I'm being like hypocritical here because I've made up plenty of names and plenty of like word mashing and all of that. Made up names for like fantastical worlds and all of that. But what the hell is a Furiosa or an Immortan? Is that his title or is that his name? Do we know?
I assume it's like
you don't know. You don't know.
Well, I assume it's like Immortan is like chancellor or minister. So like you'd say minister.
Have you heard anybody else be called an Immortan? We
no,
don't
it just
know.
Feels like that. Here's the thing with all of this. Like I don't really know how to respond because I don't really have answers for you. I also don't mind that we don't know. I feel like we get enough in the visuals that I'm like I understand it without like knowing the backstory. And it seems like we might get some with the prequel movie that's coming out this week.
Perhaps. Isn't there I looked up Mad Max movies. I think there's a second movie coming out though.
Yeah, The Wasteland. I don't know when that's going to be, but Furiosa is the prequel. I don't know if I'm going to look it up now. I think Chris Hemsworth might be playing Immortan Joe.
No, he's playing Dementis, another one of the names of all time.
Oh yeah, Dr. Dementis.
Oh,
I wonder if he's demented.
Oh, you might be on. Yeah,
they're pretty on the nose with. Okay, they have some other guy playing Immortan Joe. So some of the characters, it's there's a few people that are going to be from this movie that are going to be in the next one. Rictus is going to be in it. That's the ripped dude that
the older, younger brother, right? The big dude.
Yeah, Immortan Joe is going to be in it. Obviously a younger version. The People Eater is there.
The what?
The People Eater. I forget who he is in this. And then I think I'm gonna check. I think the war boy who Nux is like paired with at the beginning. Yeah. He's okay, no, it's the same actor, but he's playing a different guy. That's weird.
What was his name? Slit?
Yeah.
Jesus.
Yeah, same guy who plays young Colonel Stryker in X-Men Days of Future Past. I don't know why they're having him come back as a different guy.
I thought he played Colossus.
No, I think he's just Stryker.
Okay.
Okay. So I guess we'll get some kind of answers for that.
You hope, but we don't know.
We don't.
And to be fair to your criticisms, like I think there is like deeper stuff to go into, like extended lore if you want to. I haven't looked super into it, but I know, like I think I did some like research on the FAQ page probably whenever I first saw this. And I know like the spray is like some kind of like drug to like get them high before they go do something crazy, like when the guy
it doesn't seem like they need it. It does not seem like they need to get. They're crazy enough on their own for whatever reason that we don't know. Everybody in this
that's
world
just what
is
I've
crazy.
Heard. And textually,
weird.
It's not like I don't know. I think it's partly symbolic, and maybe there's like some kind of like maybe they're like shooting up adrenaline basically when they do that.
It just feels like this movie is just telling us to accept a lot of what it's throwing at us, and I don't care for it. Most of it.
Okay. I like that. I'm okay with it. I feel like it gives us enough, and I'm entertained, and it all looks cool. But to be fair, yeah, nothing really gets explained.
Like why everybody seems actually just insane in their own ways. It's literally every character we know by name in this movie is nuts. Even Furiosa in her own way. Why?
Yeah. This was a topic I struggled with, specifically the world building part, because it's like I kind of agree with both of you. Like on the grand scheme of objective world building, I fall more towards Jelani, where I think this is weaker and this isn't doing enough, especially when you compare it to like fantasy worlds and things that are really building from the ground up, and it's not just like an Earth so many years removed. But I also get Evan, because for me it worked. Like the visuals, I didn't need an explanation for Morton Joe or why they were following him, or if there was water elsewhere, or like if when Max tells Furiosa to turn around, if that's true or not. Like I didn't need that part of the world to be as fleshed out. Like it worked for me, so I really don't know how I fall on it, because I bought it.
Yeah, I think it's a question of like exposition in a certain way, like how much because a movie that this made me think of in terms, a very different movie, but like the world building in this movie to me is similar to how they do it in the first Toy Story movie, where they don't have that like POV character, fish out of water, come in. Or I mean, in Toy Story technically they have like Buzz come in later, but he's never there for exposition work. Like all the exposition in that movie comes from like the first couple of scenes. They're just kind of showing us a day in the life of like, okay, toys come to life, here's what that looks like, on a like on a world building level. And I feel like this movie does a similar thing with that, where everyone here, like, this is all normal to them, even though it's crazy to us. Like, I feel like you kind of couldn't have a fish out of water here, really, because
that's why I said I didn't know I wouldn't know how they would go about it, but
right, because like it seems like they're so
help.
disconnected. You'd literally have to have like someone drop from space.
Right.
Yeah, like how did you just end up here and not know what's going on?
Right.
Although a route you could take, I don't like this idea, but a route you could take to make the exposition a lot cleaner is have, when Max gets captured at the very beginning, like he gets imprisoned next to some other dude who's been there for a while, who like Max is like, oh, what's that thing over there? And he's like, oh, this is XYZ, and tells him for us. So he could be that kind of POV character. I feel like I would hate that, but it's certainly been done in other movies. And to be fair, like I'm glad this movie doesn't spend a lot of time on it. For me, the exposition works, but I can understand why it's distancing, because especially like because this world is so crazy that like if you're not into like the whole like we're gonna just have the most insane colors, everyone's gonna say crazy things, and like you have the war boys like yelling witness and stuff like right out the gate, like that can just put you off for the rest of the movie. So like if you're not here for that, then it's not gonna work. And to be honest, when I first saw the trailer for this movie, I was like, this looks so stupid. And then I heard really good things and I ended up loving it. But like it is so nuts right out the gate that like if you can't get on board for that, it's kind of over for you from there.
And I had that exact thought like after the opening sequence happened and then the title came, and I was like, I literally like paused it and I like took a deep breath and I was like, okay, doing this. I was like, this is the movie, because I was like, so like, whoa, this movie is out there. I was like, all right, we're going in for whatever this next 2 hours is about.
Yeah, it doesn't hold your hand through it,
But it doesn't pull punches either, so it's good.
Yeah. So yeah, so I like that as a fan of it, but I'm trying to think if there's something that like I don't where like something throws you in like with no like.
John Wick.
But John Wick is so much more ground like close to normal, like our normal world.
So
I don't feel
mean-
like it's as big of a. In other senses, I think you're right.
I guess
but
Star
in a
Wars, you
world-building
get right
sense,
into the Death Star with like, or not the Death Star, but you get right into Leia getting boarded with Vader.
But I feel like you can understand that a bit more because one, not everybody is insane, and two, it's in space. Like
yeah, and there's a
scroll.
lot of dialogue.
Putting it in
too.
space.
And there's the opening scroll.
That too. I don't know. Do people like read that every time? I can't imagine.
I only
Like
read
I don't
it the first
remember
time.
any. Yeah, I don't. Even when I watched them for the first time, I don't remember really reading those.
I can't tell
But
you
you
anything
also-
that's in it.
Yeah,
Any-
I can't give you a single sentence quote from any of those. Yes, that's a good point. You have the scroll as well. It's in space, so you know you're in for something crazy. You gotta suspend. What is it? Disbelief.
Disbelief.
Suspension of disbelief.
Yeah, suspension of disbelief. That. So.
But also, Star Wars doesn't like we take a while to get to like Mos Eisley Cantina. Like that's when you start introduced, and that's probably 30 minutes in. Everyone that we see in that opening is like, I guess you have R2D2 and C3PO, but like we can tell, okay, those are robots. That's not like a new concept in 1977, and everyone else we see is either a human that looks pretty normal or a human in
armor,
a stormtrooper suit.
Or, yeah.
So I think it's a bit of a it's not as in your face like we're going nuts here, guys, like right out the gate. But I guess it is like a fair example, but that's also doing stuff to like make it a little easier to like have it's making it easier to access, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of anything else off the top that's like I guess maybe Lord of the Rings, but even that is like
you have
you
a
know,
medieval basis for it.
yeah,
and they
that
had like the whole opening monologue with the exposition scene about the Rings of Power and everything.
that too. Yeah, and in The Hobbit, like if that's your, at least like say you're reading The Hobbit, the book, as your first exposure, like it tells you right up front, here's what a Hobbit is, and even so, it's basically just like, all right, they're about 3 feet tall, but they're basically just regular dudes that don't wear shoes, and that's about it, and they live in holes. Like, it tells you that out the gate. So it is pretty accessible.
Like I don't know if I want to praise the movie for not giving us anything like that, or like dislike it for that, because it doesn't give us any like, all right, this is the year Earth has been, it's been a wasteland for this long, like nothing
Well, I
to
guess
lead
it
us in.
depends how well
like,
it worked for you. Like for me, it worked without those details, so I can praise it. But for you, it didn't seem like it was a good time.
No.
So I mean, they're valid critiques.
Yeah, I think it's a trade-off. Because like what you get is like you don't have to spend time on that exposition, which is I think is kind of nice. Like I was saying, I don't like the idea of having some exposition character that's in the cell next to Max telling him what everything's name is and stuff. But and I mostly say that because I feel like I've mostly seen like the bad version of that in other movies, but at the same time, it is like, okay, you're saying like, what the hell is anything in this? And there's not really answers there for you, at least not textually.
No,
So
not at all.
it's a trade off. This might not, I have no idea if this is a good example. Have either of you seen or read Mortal Engines?
No.
Okay, I haven't either. I just that seems
the-
like a
that's
world
the-
that might throw you in
That's the
with nothing.
thing where like cities are on movable mechs
Yeah.
or something, right? No.
Yeah, it just seems like a world that might kind of like throw you into the craziness pretty fast. But I don't know. I haven't seen it. Did we have more there? I'm fine to keep going down that thread if we want.
No, I didn't have more on it. It's just nah. There's more. There's more I want to talk about. There's other issues I had, but we'll get
And
to
other
that.
topics.
Okay.
Okay. I had one other note for my topic before we move on. It's not really connected to what we were just saying. In a broad sense, I think story world and theme are like always kind of tied together. So like, I feel like when I write something, it usually one comes first, and then I find the other through it. So like, maybe I want to explore a certain concept, and then you have to find a story world that fits that, and like where that's a good place to explore it. And then in other cases, maybe I have like a subject matter or a story world in mind, and then try to figure out what theme that lends itself to. I think there's a decent amount of like good examples of that. One bad example, I think, is the Oscar Isaac movie from a few years ago, The Card Counter. Because I like the idea of like a poker movie, but then they make it about like Guantanamo Bay and like PTSD from going to a war overseas, which is like, again, I'm fine if like that movie is like, I'm fine with a movie covering that. It just doesn't feel like you should have that theme go with that topic. I don't really remember to my memory, they don't connect at all. It's just like Oscar Isaac used to work for like military torture people, and now he goes and plays blackjack.
What was that? That disconnect reminds me of another movie. I don't know what the movie was marketed as or what it was about, but Remember Me with Robert Pattinson.
Oh yeah, is that the one where it's like surprise it's 9/11 at the end?
Yeah, he's just standing in the tower.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard about that.
Yeah. And from what I've heard about it, that is not what that movie seemed like it was building up to or trying to send a message about, and then surprise. Like, sorry, I'm mentioning that just because you mentioning the disconnect that reminds me of that.
No, I think it's a good example. Like, I've never seen it. I have heard about that.
Yeah, I don't play.
And yeah, it's like, what does that do? Maybe it does something if you've seen it, but like, I think it's always a thing to keep in mind. Just like, how do these things that or what like topics arise from your story world that are going to be good to explore. Like, you might want to talk about this topic, but maybe it doesn't really fit if you're like, really good example of something I saw recently. I think Challengers, the Zendaya tennis movie from this past month, does a really good job of being like, all right, what can we explore through tennis, and like really milking that for like what that subject matter allows for thematically.
Isn't it about a threesome?
It's a love triangle. So I don't want to
Tennis.
spoil. Yeah, tennis.
That's what happened.
Because it's 15 love. Um,
Well,
they never. Now I'm actually shocked they don't make any puns about that. Uh, I would recommend it. I think that would be a really cool movie to do. David, I feel like you would enjoy it.
my topic is suggestions for popcorn blockbusters. No, I'm not. Okay, I graduated with a screenwriting degree. I have yet to have any credits within the industry as a screenwriter, so no, I'm not a professional. So take everything I say with a grain of salt. These are all my opinions. Okay, so no, I did not see this in theaters, as many may suggest for this type of movie. I would assume it's... What the hell is that? I would assume it's a great experience in like IMAX or something, or big screen, big loud noise, pretty pictures, whatever.
Big loud noise.
Big loud.
Big.
That's how that. Furiosa, see it in big loud noise.
I'm stating this to say, not seeing it in theaters did not affect my enjoyment of the movie. How do I know? Because I did not see other popcorn blockbusters in theaters either. But I enjoyed them from the screen of my laptop. Movies like John Wick 1 and 2. Didn't see those in theaters. I did see 3 and 4. The first Transformers movie. I think even the second. We didn't even have... You might... I don't know if this is worth cutting or not. We didn't even have, like, a non-bootleg version of the movie. Like, it was... Part of it was, like, cropped out, and all it said was Transformers in front of the title screen.
The small ones. Runs for.
And Bullet Train, more recent. Saw that. I think it was on Netflix at the time. What did those movies have? Because I enjoyed those movies. What did those movies have that this one did not? Other than the problems I've stated with the world building.
Hang on, if you're about to say that Transformers is better than this movie, you better be careful.
It didn't have
you
a
about to
character.
say that?
No.
Okay. Sounded like you might have been going there.
Well, I enjoyed Transformers more. I'm not going to say it's a better movie.
That's okay.
What did those movies have that this one did not? Character I give a damn about. I feel like that's a big issue here. If I was forced to choose one, my favorite character in this movie would be the guitar dude that's behind Evan.
He is pretty dope.
The other movies I've mentioned had characters or some sort of being I was either rooting for or wanting to see more of. Transformers had the Transformers. Even some of the Decepticons I wanted to see make it out. Like I've mentioned before, I feel like I mentioned this at least once every podcast now since we've mentioned Transformers. Blackout the helicopter was the flyest.
I
To me, John Wick had John Wick. Bullet Train had Lemon and Tangerine, but it was also funny. This movie, I recall, had maybe 1 or 2 comedic beats in it, if that. I don't remember even chuckling at this or smiling. I feel like they do attempt to get us to care about Furiosa at least, as she's more developed than Max by the end. But even then, I feel like too much is hidden from us. Maybe they were all saving everything dealing with her for the prequel movie. Like when Furiosa says her last line to Joe right before she kills him, she says, "Remember me." And my initial thought is, it wasn't, hell yeah, kill the bastard. It was, what? Oh, right, I guess she worked for him, but I don't even think they shared a scene together prior to this scene. Think about it. Max is developed even less so because we get Jack when it comes to his backstory. He gives us generic monologues and mentions something about failing people he cared about, and then we keep seeing flash of ghosts of those people.
Yeah, I didn't need that. I didn't need the flashback of the little child. That was a bit much.
And then the child ends up saving him when she force pushes his hand up into his face. Whoopee. What? Even, and I was trying to give this movie something. So I was comparing it to something where characters, you're not even really rooting for characters. Horror movies. Even in horror movies, if I'm usually there to watch the slasher itself. Like, maybe not the human characters that we're following. I don't think anybody has ever cared in the history of horror movies and horror fans. Most characters cared about.
That's so not true.
Okay.
The face David, sorry for audio fans,
Sorry.
David just made the most like shocked
All right.
face.
I'll retract that statement. Fine. I'm usually there, me personally. I'm usually there. I'm not there to watch the people that are gonna get killed, the meat bags. I'm there to watch the slasher itself, like Jason Voorhees or Alien. I like to think that translates to having some sort of investment in the film. I want to see Jason clap some humans, or a chest burster, or aliens doing alien things. Everyone, aside from... Wait. No, that's weird. No, there's no aside. Everybody in this movie is crazy. Or weird. Or weird and crazy. Like, and it's not fun. I don't laugh at them. I was confused the entire time. So do you guys have anything else? Because I end this topic off with like actual suggestions. So if you guys have any other notes or anything you want to add for this.
I feel
For
like there was
me-
some. Well, go ahead.
For me and my own personal taste, what would take this above and beyond to make this movie a movie I was more invested in and something I would want to rewatch and stuff would be more plot and character, because I need to get invested into the character, and I wasn't super invested. But like all of the stunt work and the practical effects really did entertain me. So if that could just be accompanied by like a little bit more of like we said, there was no script, so maybe a little bit more of a script with a little bit more development of the character and more intentionality in that regard, then I think I would be more interested in rewatching this movie.
That's fair. I mean, I don't know if this is exactly the point you're making. I think this rises above most popcorn blockbusters for some reasons that I've talked about and some that I will later in this topic. But I do think, to validate your point here, it's not giving you a whole lot in terms of like traditional story. And I'll explain why I think that's good later. But I do think that, like, if you're saying like this is all the stuff that's distancing you, a lot of times, like, if you do have like I tend to not like this as much. I think there is a utility to doing a pretty formulaic 3-act structure for your movie. Just in the sense that like it gives people something to latch onto. Like, there's a reason it works. There's a reason people use it a lot. I don't tend to enjoy that as much, but for the like, if you're coming into this like not necessarily on board for this ride, then like you're not given that, like, those typical things. Like I'd still think this has a 3-act structure and does some like standard narrative things, but it doesn't feel standard. And I think a lot of that is the lack of dialogue. But there is something lost there. So I think that's worth noting.
But okay, to add to that, like movies like Circle, I enjoyed. There's nothing but dialogue in Circle other than like people like stepping off the circle or physically voting. There's nobody I cared about in that movie, but I found that I would rewatch Circle. There's a lot of movies I would rewatch before rewatching this one.
Is Texas Chainsaw one of them?
Yes, it is.
Bro.
Oh, yes, that's it.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
You would watch Texas Chainsaw before
Texas
this?
Chainsaw is also a shorter film.
Not by that much. I mean, it is pretty short, but this is 2 hours. It's not long.
I would rewatch Texas Chainsaw before this.
That made my day.
I'm going to ignore that. What the hell, man?
Yeah, I'm not kidding either. I don't care.
I know David would rewatch Texas Chainsaw over this, even though he likes it like this better than you. But oh boy, that hurt. Okay. I guess let's get into the rest of your topic here. Oh, actually no. Before we do that, I do think I want to basically agree with your point about like something like Circle, because you're saying that doesn't have the like stuff that you're talking about. There isn't someone to really care about, but there's a hook to it. That movie has a really strong hook that like keeps you there the whole time. So in that case, I think it's like a premise thing. We talked about like the premise of that movie in there, and like how it is just kind of exploring its premise really hard. Like if you deep into the characters there, or any, since there's like 50 of them, like it kind of defeats the purpose of what that movie's going for. And you know, I still think this movie does a good job at what it's trying to, but it does give you enough with some of these characters that maybe, yeah, you want more. Like, this isn't Circle in that sense. And it's not even, like, I think in some cases it does kind of what we talked about with Final Destination, of, like, making some of them really simple and memorable. Like, I think a lot of the henchmen and even a few of the wives are, like, done. They're given that like really basic, and maybe this is getting into David's topic, like they're given really like simple things for us to remember. The hair, and they have like one kind of personality trait that you can sort of remember. Yeah. So there's a bit of that, but then you also have Nux and Furiosa and Max, and we get more from them, and for me, I think it's enough. I think there's enough in the subtext. I'm not going to argue that they're the deepest. I think they are deep enough that we can track their arcs. I don't know that Furiosa has like I'd say she's a flat arc character, but we can track enough with them, I think. But it certainly is not the most. There's a lot we don't know about them. We get very little in terms of backstory. There's hints of it for each of them, but not much is explained. So I can understand wanting more from that.
I don't know if it says anything about me or how surface level the characters are, but I didn't feel anything when anybody on the main cast died. And they tried to like make it epic or pretty or whatever. Like when it came to Nux's death, I was just like, okay, he's dead. He pointed, witnessed me, or whatever. All right, he did the thing. Move on.
I don't like feel anything, but I think it's narratively satisfying at least.
Yeah.
I thought it was a good arc.
Furiosa, when she got stabbed, I was questioning whether she was going to live or die. Did I have any feelings towards it? No. Aang Herod. That's actually gets into more of the characterization notes I had. So if we didn't have more,
I had some more for your topic.
okay.
If well, were you going to do your like suggestions?
Yes.
Okay, let's get into that then.
What else could be done? What other suggestions do I have? Give the audience more, not more of the action, more of the plot and the only other things this movie doesn't, plot and characters. Give us more of that. I feel like they tried with the scenes in between the action set pieces, like when we see nightfall for the first time and everything is just blue, like everything's quiet, they're talking a bit, and then more dudes in the cars show up. Okay. But like even those moments, or when Furiosa, when she finds out the green is all gone and it's overtaken by crow stilt people, she falls onto the sand and screams into the sky. Okay, I just did not care. I did not care. I'm mentioning those to just point out, yeah, it seems like they tried, but it was not enough. They focus on the wives. I put pure women in quotes because that's what they're referred to at some point, I think. The pure something, whatever. They focus on them a lot. Maybe not a lot, but they do focus on them. And I still felt less than nothing when like Aang Herod died. I was like, oh, they killed the pregnant lady. Okay. What else? What else does this? Where else is this going? I'm all for surprise deaths, but in a story where it seems like it's trying to be about something, I would appreciate it if you made us care a bit more. Also, the women from Furiosa's Green Gang thing, they gave some focus to them, like the lady with the seeds, and when she got her neck slashed or whatever by that saw, I was just like, all right, let's can we get to the end of this movie? Like I had no feelings towards it, and that it bothers me because I think it could have been so much more than what it was. Like this movie, like actually could have been. I really could have enjoyed this movie, but this was just. It just felt like straight action, and when you're not connecting to anything in the movie whatsoever, it's just it's just something to look at, which I guess makes a popcorn film, but like I said, even in the other movies, like I had some sort of investment in them. So, nah. This ain't it, Chief.
I can see you on the like lack of investment in the characters. I think I think it's okay that this movie doesn't do that. But yeah, like I don't think it gives you a whole lot to get invested in. So that's fair.
That was all I had on my topic. If I have anything else to add to David's that I haven't mentioned as far as characters go, I'll just add what I can to it, but that's it.
Okay. I had more points for yours. David, did you have any before I get into mine?
Not pretty much everything I just had said already. Just like for me, I prefer more plot and more character, but in a movie like this where the selling point is the spectacle and all of that action, I think it does enough character-wise to get me interested, because I did start to piece together like the wives and the history of that, and Furiosa and her clan and how long they've taken since they've seen her, And like when she says like the whole thing about like redemption or whatever, and like I start to like infer in my own mind and like fill the gaps about all the things that she's done for Joe that she regrets and everything that she's trying to fix. And so I kind of started to do the work for them because they weren't giving it, if that makes sense. So I'm not sure what that means, but I was able to still find enjoyment.
Yeah, I think it gives you enough hints that, like, it is kind of more in your own imagination, I guess, that, like, it's trying to give you enough to fill that in. For my money, it does, but also, like, to validate Jelani's reaction, there's not a lot there. So I think it's fair if you don't get invested. And I'm not, like, I don't care that much about the deaths in this either. Like, none of them like devastate me like that or anything.
You didn't cry when the nameless old lady got hit in the neck with the saw, Evan?
I like her, so I was like, oh man, like, too bad she's not gonna be doing anything for the rest. I also kind of like, I don't know if this is bad, but like, I think it's kind of funny in that moment where, like, I don't think you see which one, but like one of the wives goes, "Are you okay?" And I'm just like, she just got like slapped. What do you think? Like, it's just kind of funny. Like, obviously not. To answer your like what suggestions for popcorn movies, I think a lot of what helps for me anyway is choosing what to focus on. Like, I think all of the bumps that you have are understandable, but I think you can't deny that this movie knows what it wants to be. Like, it is committing really hard to its world building and its genre stuff. Like, it's all in there. So I think that's why it keeps the plot and the characters pretty simple, because it's putting so much work into other places that it's trying to still give us like enough to latch onto, and maybe it wasn't enough for you, but I think it understands what it wants to prioritize, at least. Like, that doesn't feel like an accident, it feels intentional. And I think, like, if you're a genre movie, committing to your genre thing can count for a lot, I think. Like, something that surprised me in watching movies for these trend videos that I've been making is how many of them don't really do their genre thing that hard. Like, a lot of the gritty fairy tale movies aren't really that gritty. And, like, they don't seem like they care about the fairy tale that they're adapting. Like, with Jack the Giant Slayer, I watched that and I was like, I don't think anyone wanted to make this. Like, like, I can't tell what they're... Because sometimes, like, I'll see something that's, especially from, like, a big director, I'll see something that's, like, I don't like necessarily, but I can at least understand what they wanted to do with it, or, like, why they were drawn to it. I hate Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, but I can at least understand what Tarantino wanted to do with it. Like, I think he made the movie he wanted to. I don't like it, but I think this happens mostly with, like, big studio movies, where it's like, okay, we're trying to, like, just use this IP that we have. We gotta make some kind of money off of this thing, or follow this trend, like with Jack the Giant Slayer. It's like, all right, Alice in Wonderland just made a lot of money, so let's see, what can we do? Let's make a super down the middle fantasy action movie out of Jack and the Beanstalk, and grab X-Men dude to make it. He's
there's a connection because he's Nux in this movie too.
Oh yeah, well, I was saying the director, but yeah, he is an X-Men and Jack the Giant Slayer, isn't he? Wasn't even thinking of that. But it just feels so devoid of, like, any care, and I was wondering, like, is that kind of what we mean when we say something's mid? Like, is it because it doesn't know what it's focusing on? I don't think that's always true, but I think
it
a
reeks
lot
of
times,
like was it corporate fiddling,
Yeah, like studio
tampering,
notes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
corporate tampering.
Yeah, like a lot of decisions sometimes will feel like they're made because I feel like latter day Star Wars has a lot of this, where they're like, okay, we need to check all of these boxes, so let's like do, we're gonna check them in like totally individual ways that don't work. So we're gonna get this lightsaber to where it needs to be for the fan service, but also let's throw in this new puppet guy that we can make toys of, and also I guess we got to pay off this thing from the last movie, even though it doesn't really make sense here. Like it's
Frozen 2 reeks of that too. That's just another example.
where
As far as like corporate tampering, like middle of the road, like they were so close to like making a decision or having it be about something, but then they rescind it at the end of the movie. I forget the theme.
They also waste
But it
like 10
happens there.
minutes to play charades.
What happened?
They waste like 10 minutes in the beginning playing charades in the first act, and it makes me want to die.
Do they? I don't remember that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
put it
I
off in
think-
them.
I don't think
I
it's
remember
that
sitting in
long.
the theater it's not really 10 minutes. I'm saying that for comedic purposes. That would be
It might
insane.
feel like 10.
It
though.
feels like
might
it
only
feels
be
like
2.
the whole fucking movie. Like when I remember sitting in the theater and like when that scene happened, I was like, "This is where we're at. Okay, this is gonna be a shitty sequel that was just there to make money. Wow. Okay, this is what we're doing with the animation."
Yep. She's got a new dress. They've got a horse now that they can sell with her dolls, action, whatever you want to call them.
Yeah.
You know, did the troll people come back? No,
I don't think
I don't
so.
remember that movie. But, yeah, I gave that as another example of just corporate tampering, middle of the road. It feels like it wants to say something, but they play it safe, which is
Yeah.
why people also hated, well, not hated, but Spider-Man 2, the video game. People thought the story was too safe.
I've referenced this movie in a number of videos that I've made for like different reasons, but the first video I made on A Star Is Born, it kind of like points to something we were just talking about a second ago, with like when the priority is somewhere else, where like you can tell they made this movie to sell toys or to launch a franchise or something like that, and like we can feel that when it's done poorly. But I pointed to this movie and a couple of others. I don't think I named them, but like I just kind of like showed a couple clips from them. When you do like one thing really well and like focus on that, I think for me I give it a bit of a pass if it's not doing story stuff as hard, like traditional story stuff. John Wick falls into that category too. Or I know another movie that I put clips of for that video was Napoleon Dynamite. Like, there's no plot in that movie, but it's committing to what it's doing hard enough. And I think another movie that I am probably more in love with than it deserves, In Time, I think commits to its bit really hard. Like, you can say that it's stupid, but it's not ashamed of what it is. Like, you can tell that this is like the movie they wanted to make. To me, that counts for a lot. Like, for another thing that I'll talk about, the video that I'm putting out soon at the end, I think Pacific Rim 1 versus Pacific Rim 2, there's a world of difference in just like how those movies feel, because one feels like we had a pretty cool idea and we're gonna like do some cool world building with it, and then 2 just feels like, all right, let's crap out another one that basically looks worse, is mostly like, seems like it's mostly there to sell toys, and we're gonna just like toss in a whole bunch of humans because we don't really know what else to do with it.
Oh,
And
boy.
the robot fights are not even gonna be better or bigger. They're just gonna be there because screw it, we don't need to do anything else. Like, that's what I feel like the undertone of that movie is, and it shows. So for me, that's a really big thing, is like, if you're gonna be a popcorn movie, like, own it. Don't give, like, I think that's my frustration with a lot of Marvel movies, is they're just there to be basic and then set up the next one. Like, that's what you can tell that's what they're there to do, is just like be a teaser for whatever the next thing is.
That's why Guardians 3 did so well. It was so heavy on characters and trying to be about something, I think, that it blew every other Marvel movie around it out the water. Oh, I forgot you hate Guardians.
No, well, I do, but I wouldn't, and I haven't seen it, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's true. Because I think for everything I dislike about those movies, like, they do seem committed to being their own thing more than the other. Like, didn't see this either, but, or, well, okay, I'll point to one I did see. What the hell is not Quantumania, Ant-Man and the Wasp? What is that there to do? That should have been a post-credit scene. Like, it is not there to do anything else. I assume you can. I just haven't seen it.
No, I have.
It's valid.
That is one of. I think that's bottom 5 for me.
Yeah, it's a nothing burger.
I don't ever want to waste time on that again.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's also why people like Shang-Chi so much, because it was its own thing.
Different. My brother loves that movie.
It's a good movie because it's actually like trying to be a satisfying movie that you can like enjoy in one sitting.
And he was also like, the world is something we don't really see in like media often nowadays. So, in the whole, it had like a Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon feel to it, and I was just like, yeah,
for sure.
I get it.
Yeah, I've heard similar things, and I don't hear people say that specifically. But I feel like that's kind of what we mean sometimes when we say mid, like kind of unconsciously. It's like I don't feel like you hear mid thrown around with something like, just for this podcast, I don't hear you calling this mid, Jelani. I hear you calling it bad more so.
Because I didn't enjoy it.
It's a stronger reaction.
Yes. I give y'all everything when it comes to visuals in this movie, but in order for me to have connected to it in some way, that's all the reasons, all the gripes I gave. To me, it's not something I'd want to revisit, but it definitely goes in. It leans in one direction towards something, and that's the action. So I can't hold that against it.
Yeah, I think some things end up getting acclaimed for that, and I think this is a case where this is, as it's getting a prequel and a sequel cleaned up at the Oscars, and I think it deserved every one that it got. But in other cases, like, you commit to the bit and it kind of flops. But in a certain way, like, maybe this isn't the best thing to point to, but like Shyamalan, I feel like some of his less beloved movies, he's like trying so hard for it to be something, and it makes it flop harder. But I almost respect that more than taking like a Jack the Giant Slayer. Do you
respect The Last Airbender, Evan?
I'd have to check back on that one. But like, in terms of approach, it kind of feels like sorry, David, I saw that look.
You have to check.
I haven't seen it since I was 11. Okay, my memory of it is very bad.
You don't have to check.
I didn't mind it when I was 11, but I was 11. Like, I liked bad stuff, other bad things back then too.
Ong, where is Ong?
I know if I rewatched it, it would be bad. I just don't want to say too much with that.
I will say though,
you just needed to
like
watch
the new
show.
live action Netflix show, not much better.
I heard the action is better in that, but I've heard that's actually mid.
Mm-hmm.
I've been told not to waste my time on it.
Don't.
Same. Yeah, because you can't top the original show.
There's no way they were going to.
Yeah.
But there was also, like, no way they were going to fail harder than the movie. So.
Yeah. But I
They got
feel, I
close.
don't know. That's,
Jesus.
I feel like they all, like, that almost feels like the Snyder Cut and the Suicide Squad approach, where it's like, well, if we're better by comparison, that's good. But you're also, like, in that case, you're worse by comparison, too, so it doesn't really work. But I feel like that's the corporate logic. Where they're like, we struck out so bad last time. If we're decent, they'll love us.
That's what happened with Transformers.
Yeah.
Going from
Yeah.
The Last Night to Bumblebee to Rise of Beasts.
Yeah. They worked
And
for
they cut out the human characters. I didn't know that because I haven't seen Rise of Beasts, but they listened to me specifically.
Yeah. And I think it's a good change. But, like, in that case, too, and, you know, kind of teasing for the video I'll mention at the end that I'm working on, like, I think those two, like, Bumblebee and Rise of the Beast understand what they want to be. And, like, you can tell that somebody cared there. Like, whereas Transformers 4, it's like, you put a lot of visual effects artists to work and they made it look good, but, like, they made this. Like, what did anyone want those? Like, I was watching The Last Night and I was like, nobody cared about this. Like, this just feels so, like, nobody at any level cared.
I don't even remember if I watched that or not. And I feel like if I did watch it and I don't remember anything from it, that's not good, man. That's not good.
It's really bad.
I don't ever plan on spending my time on that, man. Unless I'm paid to. Straight up, like, I'm good.
Yeah, it's bad. Sorry that took a little longer than I meant to. That's the end of my points for that topic.
Oh. Okay. David, you want to take over? What else do we have?
Yeah, I feel like we've kind of talked about it a little bit throughout the episode, but for me, what made up for the lack of traditional world building was the characterization of the characters around the world. That kind of gave me enough to infer how this world works and kind of where we're at in whatever timeline this is, either before or after now. And like we said, there's a cleverness to realizing who really matters in the story and how you're going to portray them. I think a lot of the unnecessary, I shouldn't say unnecessary, but like the characters that are more there just to serve a purpose and not be super compelling, like the henchmen or the pregnant women or the wives, they do a really good job making them more archetypical and just kind of one note and giving a simple kind of visual design to them so you can discern between them, and they have different accents and stuff and they talk and have different lingo, so it kind of, you never know their names, but you also have no issue telling them apart, which is kind of successful in my opinion.
Oh, there was a fifth one I forgot about.
A fifth woman?
Yeah, I kept like showing, like seeing the faces in my head, but I felt like there was a fifth one, and that was the one that kept trying to run back to them.
Yeah, who was like, let's just go back. Once
Yeah, I remember the Seed one, who had been in, that actress was in Lovecraft Country. I remember, speaking of Transformers, there's some crossover here, Evan.
Yeah,
Carly.
the only other movie that she's been in.
Are you serious?
I checked on, I don't know, she might have done like other things, but in terms of movies, it's this and Dark of the Moon. That's it.
Zoe Kravitz, can't forget her. There's the redhead who had a thing for Old Boy. And
which was so random, I don't know why they added that.
I didn't want to get it. I was digging on this movie enough. Like, I didn't want to get into that.
I think at least that doesn't work great for me either, but I think at least they don't hinge too much on it. It's like, it's there, and I think it's like it's good for exploring other parts of the world, I think, but I'm just glad they don't spend a lot of time on it. At least, like, if it doesn't work, it's only about 4 minutes of screen time. So, if that.
Yeah, I agree. And as far as like the design and how they portray more of the important players like Joe and Furiosa and Max, I thought it was really compelling and interesting, especially because like Max kind of serves as the pseudo like super experienced suave guy who can like how he walked away and then came back like 10 seconds later all bloody and with everything and the guns and everything, and they're like, how did you do that? Like what?
That was kind of cool.
Yeah, so like he kind of has like this really cool, like a real coolness to him and an edge where he can take care of himself, but he is new to this specific Joe area and what's happening, and he needs Furiosa to kind of fill him in a little bit and give him some context, which also kind of helps give us a little bit. So I thought that was clever too, because this really is Furiosa's movie. Like Max can leave 20 minutes in once he gets that bus or whatever it is. Like he can just be like, I don't want to help you guys, it's over, stay in this with me, I'll point my gun at you and we're leaving. But like at a certain point he gets compelled to help these people. So I found all of that really kind of well done. And just as far as like portraying different clans in a post-apocalyptic kind of way, I thought it was really cool, just like the white body paint and then like the black circles around the eyes for Joe's people. What were the War Dogs? Is that what you said they're called?
War Boys.
War Boys. Yeah, I thought that was like a really kind of just like jarring and shocking design that worked. Like if I saw a group of people like that screaming and running at me, I would be freaked out too. And I also think it's like works towards their whole like Norse Valhalla thing, because I know like old Norse warriors would run around naked and just like fight naked in all body paint and stuff to psych out the people they were fighting against.
Yeah, that psyched me out.
Mm-hmm.
That worked.
So I was like, that's kind of cool too, to bring in history to inform how you're designing your characters. And then like the gas people, they gave me big Star Wars vibes. They gave me big Star Wars, like, whatever their names
Tusken
are.
Raiders, yeah.
Yeah, the Tusken Raiders. Big Tusken Raiders vibes.
Yes. Because they had, like, masks with, like, 6 eyes or something, right?
Mm-hmm. Big Tusken Raider vibes. And, like, the robes and everything. And then, like, the original Furiosa clan of women, where she came from, like, that green area. Like, I thought that was really interesting. And the design of them was different, too. And I don't know. All of the elements visually that they use to characterize and differentiate these people that you're just meeting, and this is like the 3rd or 4th movie in this franchise, so like just jumping into it, not knowing the context of like all these other movies and how this world works, it worked for me. Like I was able to kind of get along with everything.
I want to know my dad's thoughts on this movie, because I know he saw the other movies.
Okay.
Well, he's also big into cars too, right?
Yes. No,
this is a very car-heavy movie, so
that's another thing I think. Like they could have maybe expanded upon. I can't guarantee I would have been interested personally, but I think it would have been interesting, or at least to know something about why these cars are built this way. Because this is straight up just that, I don't know. They're not just like out there in Lamborghinis. They're heavily all these cars are heavily modified, so I kind of wanted to know a little bit more about that. Like only thing we get is Max pointing at the dude that's driving his car, and he says, "That's my car." Yeah, it is. It's got and then they'd start spitting gasoline into the engine or something.
Yeah, that was crazy.
I love that part. I love, like, every, like, 5 minutes in this movie, I'm like, oh, this scene, I love this scene. And that's one of them. I'm serious. Like, that was my reaction this time. I'm like, oh, yes, this scene now.
I'm glad. Listen, I'm not going to hold it against anybody that did enjoy it. All of this stuff I mentioned was just personal stuff, so I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm glad you had a fun time, too, David. Like,
and I'm not going to hold it against you for not.
Yeah.
I'm disappointed, like I said, but and I thought this would be I'm not expecting you to like any of the Sorkins that I bring us.
Well,
I know
Molly's
David,
game I have an interest in.
Oh yeah, that I guess now.
I think you'll like The Social Network.
I do
Probably.
too. Like I genuinely think The Social Network is going to work for you. I'll be more disappointed if that doesn't, because I really think there's stuff you're going to latch onto there, even though it's like genre-wise, like in terms of premise. But in terms of premise, I wouldn't like a Facebook movie either, and that's my second favorite movie of all time last I checked. So, like,
I'm also just invested in how people, like, as an actor, like, I also get invested in how people, like, act. And those, from clips I've seen, those performances look
Oh my
It's
god,
a
they're
very
so
actors
good.
movie.
They're so
look,
good
they
performances.
look
And some of the
nuts.
lines too, like Sorkin was on when writing that script. He
Mm-hmm.
reads like, oh my god. I'm like watching the scene where he's just yelling at Army Hammer's characters, and he's just, oh my god, oh, it's so good. Oh my
It's
god.
so great. I don't know how soon I want to do that one because I haven't seen that movie in a while either. So
And any movie for this podcast that I haven't seen, I always go in wanting to enjoy the movie. So of course I'm
Yeah.
disappointed myself when I don't.
Right.
I'm just like,
I do too.
wanted to like
And-
this.
And I picked this hoping you would like it also. Like, but I apologize for Bohemian Rhapsody because that was an exception to that rule, if we want to call it that. Like I don't like that, and I didn't really expect you guys to. So apologies there. But yeah, this one, like, I'm sorry you didn't, but I think like you're still bringing good points here, and like I get it. This is not. It's kind of the same with like Scott Pilgrim. Like I love it, but it's definitely not a movie that's going to work for everyone.
Yeah.
There are things that make it a little less accessible.
Am I the general audience? Am I the G rating? I feel like am I always not always the target audience, but I feel like I'm the generic audience. The more we talk about this stuff.
I think more so than either of the two of us, probably.
Yeah. Huh.
I'm trying to think what like your like most unconventional like thing that you like is. Maybe the social experiment ones, because those aren't like super popular.
Yeah. Circle.
Yeah. One thing that I like about the characterization is that everyone has like a different relationship to the story world and like the society, where you have like Joe at the top as the authority figure, and then Max and the mostly Max is the outsider, and then kind of the other like old women that come in at the near the end, and then Furiosa. Well, the wives are like victimized by it, and then Furiosa and Nux are both servants of it. And I feel like out of everyone, Nux is kind of like the centerpiece of that, where he is the most bought into the ideology. Like, I've heard people say Max has the arc in this. Watching it this time, I feel like Nux has a bigger arc of like, and I can't believe I hadn't seen this before, but I feel like he's kind of maybe the best henchman character that we've ever had in terms of like actually examining his relationship to the villain. Like, it's, I guess I can't think of anything that does it better, at least off the top. But I feel like that's kind of the centerpiece of it, where like he's realizing how this like ideology and system that he's bought into is not what he's been promised, and that's it's pretty strong, I think. And to agree, I'm trying to remember because it's been 30 minutes since you said it, but I agree with what you were saying there, David, earlier about like how each of these characters are like how much they're focused on, and like how they're made to be like memorable enough in that way. I think that was it. Oh, also just like everyone's allegiances and goals, I think are really easy to follow at every point. I don't know if you get. I'm also coming at that as someone who's seen this like 4 times, so it's a little easier for me to track. I don't know if that was my experience the first time. So if you guys didn't feel that way, then maybe it doesn't do as good of a job at that as I remember. But I feel like it's there. It's like pretty.
What does Max want prior to him deciding to help them? He just wants to go?
Yeah, he just wants
I think
to kind of
so.
be free and get out.
Because other than
Yeah.
him, I know everybody else's goals. That's a good point.
Yeah. And he needs her to drive the truck because of the way she rigged it, and then she won't go without the women.
Mm-hmm.
I do really like the trust that gets built gradually between Max and Furiosa. Like, I was waiting for it this time, but I really love the moment where they start working together finally, instead of just kind of I think it's as they're leaving the gas people. I forget what
When she
video
says
it
fool?
is. Yeah. But it's after that moment, there's a little bit later. I remember somebody pointing this out in a video. There's never a scene that does it, but there's this one shot of both of them. They're both in the shot, pointing a gun at something. I don't know if it's the same thing, but it's this one shot where we just are visually told these guys are on the same team. They're working in parallel.
Oh, it was nighttime. I think this is it. It was nighttime, and he takes 2 shots, and Zoe Kravitz tells him, you have 3 bullets. He takes the 2 shots, and then Furiosa walks up behind him, and he hands the gun to her, and then she tells him, "Don't move." Is that the scene?
I like that one too. There's one earlier than that. That was the one I'm talking about. But I like that one too. I think that's one of my favorite beats for their relationship.
Yeah, I don't remember when it specifically happened, but it was a similar moment where they were in the truck and they were fighting together, and she was driving and he was shooting, and then he was working, giving her guns, and they were working together, and I was like, this is nice. It's been 10 minutes and you just tried to kill him and he just tried to kill you, and I like that where we're at right now. This is doing good.
But I think they also don't try to oversell us on it, where as soon as they get to the green place, or what used to be the green place, and he's about to go his separate way, they're yeah, we've known each other for a day, and I think us watching the movie kind of knows that they're gonna be in it together until the end. But I think there's enough acknowledgement of yeah, these two just met, they have no allegiance to each other, but they, at the end of the day, they're also not enemies. I feel it's balancing that well, in a little bit more gracefully than some other movies that try to force 2 characters together, and then one of them, I feel the really bad version of this is sometimes one of them will go well, I've come this far, I guess I'm gonna see this out to the end, even though I should probably just nope out of this situation because I have no reason to be here.
I guess it becomes symbiotic.
Yeah.
Their relationship.
Yeah, but I think when he comes back, that is a big moment, because it is the first time that he's invested by he's helping them by choice there for the first time. So it I feel it hits better.
You mean at night when he goes to stop the car or whatever?
No, I mean when he goes and follows them out onto the sand, after they realize that the green place isn't there anymore, and everyone else is driving I don't know what direction, but further away from the Citadel, and then he goes and catches up to them and tells them to turn back. It's the first time he's invested when it's of no benefit to him.
All fair points. I don't have anything to add to that.
Yeah, that was the end of my notes.
Alrighty.
Cool. Okay. So that's the end of our topics, and I guess we'll go to the boilerplate then. Upcoming episodes are Would You Rather as Jelani's next pick, and Halloween as David's next pick. We have our YouTube channel. I don't think I'll have it done by the time this comes out, but probably before the next podcast, I should have a pretty sizable trend video on the big robots trend. We mentioned that a couple times. It's a little shorter than the fairy tales one. I think it's going to come in at about 30 minutes. But yeah, all the Transformers movies, Pacific Rims, Real Steel, and Battleship, and Bumblebee. So, yeah, not the greatest lineup, but I had fun with this video. We have our Patreon with our Revenge of the Fallen watch-along, and our Tangent episode. And apparently, given the tangent that we just had that you guys won't hear, apparently we're going to be doing a Shark Tale and a Cat in the Hat watch-along at some point. Date TBD. But I guess that's what we're doing now. Our logo's by Kelsey Hendry. I'm on Letterboxd at Ev_Wes. Where are you guys at?
I'm on YouTube at Jelani T. Kelly, Instagram at Jelani T. Kelly. That's it.
I struggled a lot with where I want it to be because there's so many great locations in this movie. So I feel like I'm going to settle with like the undercarriage of Furiosa's truck where like they hide the women and they kind of can come through. That's where I am.
It looks so cramped. It looks so cramped. You want to be there, David?
I'm gonna feel safe and protected like I'm in the womb.
I think you're gonna feel. I was gonna say something, but I don't think it's gonna top that. So,
okay.
I guess we'll see you guys next time.